link doesn't work.
Do I get to see who's on? Little technical adjustments here, guys, so hang on.
Good to go.
Oh, I can go? All right, are you sure?
Yeah.
Well, Heather just showed up, so I'm ready.
Now.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. John McCormick, the Chief Accountability Officer. And I wanted to talk to you today about facility consolidation, or other known as space wars or space plan or whatever other terms that might be called in the hallways. We want to address today some of the reasons behind the decision to consolidate buildings 2027 and building 1300 into one location. And that would be building 1300. So why did we do it? What's involved? When is it going to happen? And who else is going to be affected by this? So let me give you some background. The impetus for this decision was made a while back when we realized that the child that we birthed during COVID, called teleworking, was catching on. And it was becoming more and more a bigger part of OPI's workforce, as is the case with other organizations and companies that survived through COVID, and they had to do things differently. That was the same for OPI. Right now, today, we have 68% of our workforce is teleworking. We're going to consider a hybrid scenario, and we're in the process of revising policy to align with that. That gives us even another option that will help workers make choices about work-life balance. Some positions are designated as telework only. Some positions are designated as in office only. So if we have 68% now, and we go up to 75% of our workforce being teleworking, that opens up a lot of space. And that space costs money. In fact, this building that we're sitting in, 1227, we save $183,000 a year in just by vacating this building and turning it over to the state. And they want it. So that started the ball rolling toward, well, what should we do? And well, 1300, is it big enough? Is it suitable enough, etc. We went over and investigated the answer to those questions and found that there was adequate space. We may have to reconfigure a few things. Over here, we have mostly office space. There they use cubicles and offices for a variety of reasons. So we did that investigation and found that it was feasible to seat everybody comfortably in office or wherever they were at. So, but there has to be some improvements. And those improvements were most notable in the carpeting, particularly on the lower floor. And so we're in the process of moving in that direction of getting the lower floor carpeted. And I'm looking at, for those of you on the meeting, I'm looking around the room just to make sure I make eye contact with as many people as I can and still be safe, because I have my back to people, you know, and this is live and I want to stay that way. So, well, what's the advantage of doing that? Well, One thing is the aspect of teamwork. When you have everybody under one roof and co-located in one area, then you have a better chance of improving the support that we give in processes, tools, systems that are used by the field. And the teleworking is an essential part of the way we do things, because that's how we reach schools, students, and parents. By having people geographically located closer to the stakeholders that they're serving. So that's teamwork is important in driving collaboration, working together, communicating. It's easier to walk down the hallway and just see if the person is there than try to figure out where are they, you know. It's easier to just go from one floor to the next. I do it all the time and just do my business that way instead of walking across the street. And if you've ever walked across 11th Avenue at a certain time, you do so at your own risk. Most of the time. There are times when people will stop for you, but other times you don't know what the other lane is going to do. You know, one lane may stop, the other lane may keep going. So it creates a safety issue. And we mitigate that by being under one roof. The other thing that happens in the in-office environment is the whole idea of productivity. There's more synergy because of better teamwork. There's better execution of our deliverables to the field and to the state offices. So we're still in proximity to the key stakeholders that we serve and work with on a regular basis. So I think that this has been a move that has not been well understood as to why. Those are the whys. Now, what about the when and who is involved? The when is going to take place between now. It has been going on for a while in the planning stages. You're going to start seeing deliverables being executed, and the trigger for that will be the installation of new carpeting on the first floor, which replaces old worn out stuff that are potentially trip hazards and that sort of thing. So we don't want people having to deal with that. And then there will be carpeting of the upper floor starting in July 1 or so. And that's just so that we don't have a lot of movement and people have a chance to get settled where they're going to be. And we have the money to do that. Right now, it will cost us about $30,000, $35,000 to do the carpeting on the first floor. So that's the gist of it. We would expect to have everybody moved in and in place and settled by January 15th of 2024, which, given the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, that doesn't leave a lot of work days to do this. So we have to move somewhat quickly in getting the improvements done. And that includes testing for air quality and asbestos and things like that, which is typically done when you bring new people into a building. And then we'll vacate this building. We'll try to take as much stuff with us as we can. So we would want to empty this building if at all possible. Now, the reality of it, there's also furniture over there too. So, you know, it depends on what's best in the view of the person that's moving, okay? There are offices. There are offices that have locks and there are offices that do not. So in some cases, there will be locks installed. In other cases, it will won't happen that way, so. Any questions at this point? I mean, that's the gist of what we're talking about. So this is intended to be interactive, and this is your chance to get whatever heartburn you might have or whatever questions you might have out on the table.
Where will parking?
Parking. There's pretty sufficient parking on both ends of the building and in front. And then there's also parking available in this lot across the street where the dumpsters are. They'll be moved and that space will become available if we can strike up an agreement with Safeway, who owns that spot. Then we would stripe it and reserve it for OPI employees. If not, it'll be that or on the street, which would not be 11th Avenue, by the way.
What street would it be? Because that's, I'll say that, I have a question.
It could be Washington, could be right here. It could be, you could even park here, I would assume, until the building is
No,
occupied. Huh?
yes,
And we're still crossing.
then you're still
the street?
crossing.
I might get hit by.
Then you're crossing the street.
I just had a lot of questions about parking, because somebody went over and counted spaces. And they think there's about half of what we need. Is that, that's what the question that was brought to me at one of my meetings.
One or two handy spaces.
Yeah, there might be a need for more handicap spaces. And I don't know, Bill Wilson is your best subject matter expert on that. He has been the one communicating with Safeway on the parking issue. I don't know how many spaces there can be added, maybe 10 at most, I would think. Unless, our spaces here in the parking lot for 1227 are pretty generous. I drive a Sequoia, I have plenty of room to park. But sometimes if you want to get out during the day to go to a meeting or something, then it's harder to maneuver through the space when it's full. So parking will continue to be challenging, I think. But we'll see what we can do about that. Restrooms, there was a concern addressed asked once about the restrooms. There's men and women's on the first floor, men and women's on the second floor.
Mhm.
Which is similar to what we have here, so they're not really a change there. So
So
get real questions.
Trying to think about people.
do we have a backup plan for if we can't get this safely?
If we can't get the Safeway, that's a question that we'll address when that negotiation either turns successfully or it doesn't, there's not a lot of options here. We can't go build a skyscraper parking garage or anything like that. So, and the parking isn't any worse off there than it is here.
That's not true.
That's not true. Have you parked over there?
You can get a space, but yeah, especially when I was at Ochi and I'd come over all the time.
Mhm.
I could never get anything after 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, so let me follow up with you on that and make sure that we effectively address that. That we have sufficient parking spaces.
It's a little bit of a walk, but you can suggest CVS, because it seems like they have a big parking lot that expands all the way out. And they don't have that many people there ever, so maybe looking into that for some of the people that can walk, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or,
That don't need it.
so we'd wanna, whoever we work with on that, whether it's CVS or Safeway, they have a big lot too, and it is probably 50% filled,
Hey, John, there's a couple of people online too that have questions, just an FYI.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So the question about that will have to be resolved in a formal, official way, because we don't want to just park anywhere that we might, we might have problems with. So we want an agreement that we can park there in so many spaces, et cetera. Okay, questions?
Zach Hawkins, I think is next.
What's that?
Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for this, John. Yeah, so the last time we had a couple of weeks ago, we had that big storm, there was a pretty significant leak. Right in front of Laura, our admin's desk here at the top of the stairs in 1300. And I was just curious if that if that leak was fixed, if that issue was resolved.
I don't know that that issue has been resolved. I have been in touch with Scott Kolowitz, who is with GSD, and he's been in charge of looking at those improvements. And that's the person that we have to work with. So I think Bill Wilson would be a good person to circle around with and see if he's had any updates from Scott about that. That's probably a roof patch or something of that type that I don't know. I haven't been involved in the inspection of it or anything, so thank you for bringing that up, though.
Yep, thank you.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Hi, John. I'm Crystal Andrews. I don't think we've actually met, but I am a teleworker. However, I'm sitting in 1227 right now because I do come in time to time as a director of accreditation and licensure. And I have a few questions. First, I don't know who's sitting behind you that commented on parking, but I worked in 1300 for many years before COVID and before teleworking wasn't an issue. And I put in the chat that I started my day late because I had a newborn and I never could get a parking spot. So it is an issue. There is not enough parking, and if that building is full. And I can tell you it'll also be an issue come lunch hours, starting about 10:30, 11, because the Mexican restaurant next door, all of their individuals use our parking lot when our folks go out to lunch, and then they take our parking spots to go get their lunch. And then there's not a spot for us again. And I tried to get that addressed when I was in the building. Never got anywhere with it, but I assume that'll still be an issue. And again, I'm a teleworker. It doesn't really affect me, but it affects my colleagues that are in with you now and some of my teammates. So I just wanted that lunch hour to also be addressed because that was something that was of concern.
Okay.
My second question or comment, this is a question, that was a comment, is that, I see Rob on now. I just know that we have individuals within the agency that have ADA accommodations, and I just want to be sure that you are working closely with Rob and HR on those individuals that have different needs for their office space or for, some of the things that are being accommodated at this time. And just wanted to kind of ask if you are working with HR on that, and if that's, just so that that's not getting missed.
Well, HR reports to me.
Okay,
So
well, I'm hopeful
in,
that you are aware of them then, I guess is my question.
I'm always involved in those kind of situations. Because they usually, reasonable accommodation tends to involve multiple people, 2 or 3 people involved in making decisions on what is the right thing to do, depending upon what the accommodation is. So I'm definitely involved in that. Okay.
And then my last, and I see somebody just is seconding what I was going to ask in the chat. We right now have telework stations. Like I said, there are times we need to be in the office or have meetings with our teams. And is that being considered, or is that there not enough space?
Yes, it is. Okay. In fact, there's 4 spaces on the lower floor that are used for that purpose. Now, they're cubicles. So if you had to have an office or something like that, you'd have to perhaps find one that's available, or if we don't have all of the offices fully occupied, then we would have that available. So there's gonna be the same amenities that you would expect coming into the building now, you would have there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can't promote teleworking, excuse me, and then not provide concessions to them when they need to come into the office. Good points, Crystal. Thank you.
Joan, Frankie, go ahead.
I recall for a few days, there was a sign in the parking lot that said this was for OPI, and then it just disappeared. But also, we are not allowed to park behind the Mexican restaurant barbershop building. We get, when people do that, we get yelled at.
So you're saying that there's not enough parking. So you're weighing in on that issue,
Right,
that there's not a lot of other options, including the Mexican restaurant or the
Right.
barbershop, which
Right.
would be parking that they pay for,
right,
and we wouldn't be entitled to anyway,
Right.
without their permission.
behind their building is off limits for OPI people.
Right, right. So we have to make parking a priority in the issues that we're dealing with. And I'll take that back to the team and we'll see what we can do to expedite the solution to that.
Especially, I think, here, when you talked about on the street parking. They would
you
go
can't.
away on the street.
There's a
with the
plow and
snow.
snow.
Yeah, the plow and snow,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and that would have been, in fact, I park out on the street sometimes myself. And when we had that heavy snowfall those 2 days, it was difficult to park there and get close enough to the curb to be safe. So,
I made a parking spot with my Suburban right on the end of where they plowed into the street, and then it was, somebody could park there.
so you're the one,
I'm the one that made that spot, because I was
Okay.
parking there.
all right. I think that a real legitimate concern, and what I would propose is that we arrange parking in a way that does not require anybody to park on the street. Then if they choose to do that, that's up to them.
Mhm.
I have a question about the space in general for the staff that aren't gonna go hybrid telework. What does our office space look like? I have a nice office here. Am I gonna be stuck in a cubicle for 40 hours a week without windows?
Welcome to my world.
These are the things that I just wanna know before I give my manager what I would like to do. I need to know some of those details.
Yeah, so I think you should talk first with your manager about your needs. Because your manager is gonna represent that to the team.
Well, we've been
And-
asked to let them know if we wanna go
Yeah.
telework. Well, I can't give her that decision unless I know a little bit more about the space I'm gonna be going to.
Yeah, like, are you guys trying to set up more offices over there, or is it just gonna be cubicles?
No, there's not very many cubicles over there at all. Most of them are offices, very much like this building here.
One question I had about that I've gotten asked from my staff too about the offices, are all the ones that are an office with no door, are we gonna put doors on and just finish that as an office? I think
Yes.
that answers a lot of
Yes,
the math on the number of offices.
that's in the plan.
Yeah.
And Bill has got that action item. Doors are expensive, they're about $1,000 a piece. So that is gonna add to the cost of
Can we
things.
just take the doors, can we just take the doors from here? Can
Huh?
we just take the doors from here?
Well, I don't know,
Probably $1,000 a piece.
that's what I hear.
$183,000, so, yeah.
I know, but I just bought
But let me-
doors last week and I didn't.
Let me go back to your question though. I'll ask you a question. would your decision to telework be driven by whether or not you have a suitable in-office?
Yeah.
There's a number
it
of
would,
people that.
Because I need to be comfortable
that.
and I make a lot of phone
I
calls to
was gonna say, yeah.
schools and
3.
the noise
Yeah, I know
level
Carla.
factor.
But if your office is like what you have now, you wouldn't consider teleworking.
I
don't
would
want
be
to.
more apt to work in the office. I think it's for the greater good of our division if we're in office, so we can collaborate all day long.
Yeah, well, you can collaborate. We collaborate all the time with teleworkers.
It's not the
Not-
same though.
Just going down the hall to your coworker and looking at the papers that we all have and we're constantly in each other's offices.
So you just supported the point I made earlier about teamwork and collaborating, and cooperating, that kind of thing.
Very much.
But it can be done virtually as well as physically. But not all of us are the same. I could not telework myself. I'm not good at home. I have to come in and interact with people and sit at my desk and my computer and do the work. So everybody has different desires about that. The office, we've looked at the offices. And they're not much different than they are here. I mean, there's actually more windows, I believe, in that building than there are in this one.
So if nobody here opted to go telework and you have enough space for every person in this building that's currently in office, or is this all subject to a certain percentage of people going telework?
No, there's about probably maybe an uplift of 5% would be enough to accommodate. And when I say accommodate, I don't mean like pack them in like sardines.
Okay,
Okay, the idea is to have a comfortable work environment for the people that are working in office. As much as the teleworker is comfortable in their own home. Now, to the extent that we can do that, we have limited resources, right?
Mhm.
Deanne?
Upfront, yes.
Yes.
These savings come later, so we are not
Yeah.
spending them now.
Yeah, exactly. So, to the extent that that can be accomplished, that's the whole idea behind putting in new carpeting. You know, some of the carpeting in this building is just terrible.
John, just a heads up, you only have 6 more minutes until.
What's that?
You have 6 more minutes and then.
Okay,
There's
you
one
want to
question.
speed things along?
There's a question.
All right, question. Or what is the question?
Is there a contingency plan if the manager decided to revoke an employee's telework agreement due to performance issues?
And or would the telework policy be changed if not? So either the employee or the manager can cancel the telework agreement with notice. Now, the question then is if there's performance issues involved, the manager absolutely could do that. Because one of the conditions of the telework agreement is that they meet the performance expectations. So if that's not taking place, then the telework is not working for that individual. And frankly, if you're performing, that's not anything to worry about.
His question is there space if somebody
Yeah,
come back?
so
I think is
is there
that the
gonna be space
question,
to-
Zach?
Well, that's one of the concerns that we've talked about. It's not because of the person's performance issue, but let's supposing that I've been teleworking for 2 years, I'd like to go back to the office. Can I go back? Well, now, if we have everybody come back, obviously, we would not be able to accommodate that without actually probably getting another building, a different building. Because some of those people, as I understood it, lived in 1201 and then they moved over there and so we have 122, right around 120 people that are teleworking now. If we had 100% of them say, no, I don't want to do that anymore, then we'd have to work out other arrangements. I mean, that's not something that we've even considered because the telework number has continued to go up. When I started in August here, that number was what, 58% or something like that. And now it's 68%. Less than 3 months later. And we continue to hire teleworkers. So 6 out of the 7 positions that we have posted are telework positions. So they know they're going to be teleworking. Other
Any
questions
final
or?
Questions? What about
the
if the
next
next
administration?
What about if the next administration wants more employees in the office? That is a good question. And that's a year or so out. And if anybody can answer that question, it would only be the person coming into the job. Right? I can't answer that question. I don't know who is coming in to replace Elsie when she leaves. But whatever, if that person wanted all employees or more employees in the office, you'd have to see a migration away from teleworking into the in-office, which probably would mean that we'd need to go to a different building.
There's one more last question, and then
Yes.
the time's gonna run out.
How will the replacement of carpeting be handled for current employees in the first floor of 1300? We've met with Chris Sinrud and Andy Campbell and Ashley. And we've talked through that plan and they don't see a problem. They can carpet, you know, when you think about carpeting a house, I had my whole house carpeted in Boise a couple of years ago. And we lived in it while they did it. We managed, you know, they worked around us, they moved furniture and stuff like that. And basically, that's what they're going to do. They may have to temporarily move in upstairs, a few people to temporarily relocate them. And there's that one end of the first floor that has cubicles. People could sit in there and work as well and stay out of the way until their space is done and then move to the other end, back to the other end. So those
Okay.
plans are being managed by Chris and Andy and Ashley.
All right, our time is over, but we can schedule another in the know as things progress so that everybody's on the same loop. or page.
I'm glad you brought that up, Brenda, because that would be the plan to communicate. But we don't want to communicate things that haven't changed. We want to communicate the schedule. We're open about that. We're working through the details of what deliverables we have and when they have to occur to meet the deadline of January 15th. So you'll stay tuned. That'll probably happen in the know or Thursday all staff.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone, and your ideas and your thoughts.
Thanks, John.